Hello, my beautiful Feydlings, and welcome to my study room, I guess. I decided to do something different this time rather than the typical drawing tutorials that I've been doing. I really wanted this audio video to focus specifically on DID, and we're just going to cover everything that I know about it. Again, this is just based off of my experience with it. Everybody's experience is completely different. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, but, you know, we're just going to get into how DID has affected me and also how it's unintentionally tied into my novel Feyd, which was a really fun surprise even for myself. But just to dive into it, trigger warning first and foremost. I don't know what's going to come up. Obviously this is a disorder based on trauma, so shit's going to get real, maybe, and just throwing it out there, it'll probably touch topics about self harm and just general abuse. So prepare yourself or exit out of the video. But anyway, moving on. So, what we're going to do first, because this is going to be a lot of stuff, and I want to try and fit as much as I can into this. I can already tell this is going to be a long video. We're going to. First, I'm going to explain what DID even is, because I recognize a lot of you guys, this is going to be like your first source of even knowing what it is or even hearing about it. So, I'm going to try to touch on that a little bit and just clarify some things, and then I'm going to introduce my alters, which it's not going to be in person, or I don't think anybody's going to switch out or anything like that while I'm talking, but I'm just going to go over who they are, what they do, and how it all works for me. Again, this is based just solely on my experience, but we're going to go over them just so you guys can meet them in a sense, because I'm pretty sure no one actually wants to talk like externally. We're a pretty shy system, I guess you could say. But we'll go over that, and then we'll address all the questions you guys left on my story for the Q&A. So yeah, let's get into this. I'm so nervous for some reason. Well, I know why, because I don't ever fucking talk about this. So let's fucking dive in. What is DID? We're going to ask Google, because that's going to be the best answer, I think, hopefully. So here we go. Dissociative Identity Disorder. DID. That's what it stands for. I think somebody mentioned at some point, maybe in the story, or asked what it stood for, or if it was like multiple personality disorder, which that is what it used to be called. So technically yes, but that's an outdated term now. Now they call it dissociative identity disorder, which according to Google means a rare psychological disorder in which two or more personalities with distinct memories and behavior patterns apparently exist in one individual. How very eloquent, Google. Thank you very much. Apparently. I just anyway. So it's a disorder that develops because of trauma that is repeated trauma in your childhood. So between the ages of I guess like 1 to I think 8 or 9 is the cutoff. Don't quote me. I'm not a psychologist, but this is just from my own digging around. Between the ages of, whatever, 1 to 8 to 9, usually that's when your body and your brain are like trying to become cohesive in like who you are and what your personality is. You can look this up, and I'm sure again Google or YouTube or somebody there can explain it a lot better than I can. But it's when you experience repeated trauma. It can literally be anything, because trauma is just dependent on the person who is experiencing it. One person can get punched in the face every day and it's fine, while the other person like mentally can't handle it, and so their brain goes, hey, you don't have to handle this, I will. And then you get alter A, I guess. In a sense, that's a horrible, horrible analogy, but I hope you get the picture. So it comes about from repeated trauma as a child, and your brain is unable to cope with it, and so it splits off to try to keep the host, or the main, you can say, personality, I guess, separated from that trauma, so that it doesn't have to experience it or hold that anymore, because it's just way too much for that one person to handle. So your brain goes, cool, you don't want it, I'm gonna stick it in a pocket. Problem solved. But then that pocket starts to grow roots and shit and become its own person. So that's a lot of fun. Like Google said, it's a very rare disorder, but at the same time, I think the statistic for people who have DID that have at least been diagnosed, which, is already hard enough. You have to have freaking money for that. Let me fucking tell you about that. Well, no, I won't. We're focusing on one thing right now. Anyway, so the people that have been diagnosed with DID, the percentage of those people is about the same percentage as people with red hair on the planet. So it's not crazy rare. It's just not very common. But I almost feel like, and I don't know if it's because of the genre that I'm in this particular, this profile I have, it's all about mental health and all that stuff. I have run into a good amount of people who have it or have been diagnosed or think they have it or, suspecting. And it's kind of been comforting, I would say, and just enlightening to be like, wow, like it's not just me. So that's kind of cool. Still pretty rare. I think it also occurs more in women than it does in men, interestingly enough. And just by the way, this isn't a disorder that you can just fake. I mean, like, if you're faking it, like, I'm gonna go off a little bit right now. Like, if you're faking it, you're fucked up and you need help, go get help. Like, I don't, yeah. So, no one fakes this shit, all for your 6-year relationship to fucking fall apart or to potentially lose your driver's license or to not be able to adopt kids in the future because they go through your mental health records and see like what kind of a human you are. This isn't something that should be taken lightly, and I knew that when I went in to get diagnosed, but I really fucking wanted answers, so I just bit the bullet and did it anyway. But like, this is serious shit that has real life consequences that affect almost every aspect of your existence. And yeah, just don't fuck around with it. It's rude. And don't invalidate people who think they seriously have it. Like, it's one thing to fake it and be like, oh my god, I've got DID, look at me. If there is somebody who's really struggling, because if you have it, you are struggling. It is not easy. If they really feel like they do, don't fucking tell them that they're lying, because one of the wonderful symptoms of DID is feeling that you're faking it. And that feeling can drive people to, trigger warning, cut themselves or worse, and I have been there, and I've done the whole fucking 9 yards. Like, trust me, it's been a long, oh god, it's only been like a few months, but still, it's been a long fucking few months trying to, get used to this shit. So don't test me, but I love you guys, and I promise I don't bite. I'm just snapping at the haters, I guess you could say. But anyway, I didn't mean to yell at you guys. I just get very passionate about these things. So just, anyway, rant over. Let's meet the alters, shall we? Anxiety said no, but the gram said yes. Let's start with let's start with the alter I was aware of first accidentally. I mean, at the time I thought he was a spirit guide, but whatever. Truth. So, truth is the gatekeeper. I guess it's kind of like the he decides who can front most of the time, or just like the organization aspect of the system. He just kind of runs the behind the scenes tech part of the show. In a sense, he also does memory logging. So with that, okay, so I guess first and foremost, DID, or Dissociative Identity Disorder, is kind of an umbrella term for what I have, which is osdd 1B, which means I have all the same symptoms of somebody who has full blown DID, but I don't experience amnesia like they do. I get emotional amnesia, or kind of partial amnesia. Like, it's never like a blackout, at least as far as I know. So we can all experience something, and we all kind of share the same memory bank, you could say, but the emotional baggage is separated and divvied out to the alter who can appropriately manage it. So he makes sure that that gets divvied out and taken care of. So if I experience something, I might remember it for a couple minutes or days or whatever, but then all of a sudden when I think back to it, it's gone. It doesn't feel like it happened to me because somebody else now has that emotion associated with it, whatever traumatic event it is. He also is a system caretaker, which means he does a lot again of like the behind the scenes. He doesn't ever really come forward or what they call front. He just takes care of everything on the inside. He's got this control tower that helps regulate emotions and just like it's wild shit. Feel free to ask me about it in the comments. I don't mind answering it, but it's he does a lot of the I guess the dirty work for the system without actually having to come front. He's personality wise, I guess you could say, a really easygoing, nice guy. He has an accent sometimes, and I don't fucking understand where it came from. I don't know if it's English or Polish or I don't fucking know. It's the weirdest thing, and it always feels really weird when he's speaking through me. It's like being a puppet, honestly. But nice guy. He really likes medieval stuff for some reason, like dungeons and towers and dragons and Celtic music. Kind of will trigger him out a little bit, but again, he mostly just kind of stands on the wayside and observes for the most part. I thought he was a spirit guide, like I said, I think at first, because I was very religious growing up, and so when I had this being who was helping me out of my religion, when I started to realize shit was fucked up, he appeared, and I was just kind of swept in, whatever. He just helped me, and I thought, wow, this is like my spirit guide, because my mom was like a hippie at the time, or well, still is. Anyway, what the fuck am I saying? So, he helps manage the emotional stuff. And he himself, I think, to describe him more, he's really collected and calm. And when I first met him, he was mute. Like, he wouldn't talk ever. He would just, and he still kind of does. Every now and then he's mute, but he communicates mostly with like emotional waves, like just like energy waves, I guess you could say. It's not really verbal at all. And again, he's able to regulate that stuff in what we call his high tower, where you take an elevator up and it's like this observation gallery, super sleek and shiny and white, and there's all this stuff on the shelves where if you tinker with them or mess with dials, like my anxiety will literally go away. Or, it's crazy. And it's all I have to do is ask him. Like if I'm really having a hard time and I go back in, the inner world and ask him for help, he will be like, yeah, sure, if I can, granted, if I can fucking find him, but he'll help and he'll, play with whatever gadget things that are up there, and then all of a sudden it's like this weight just comes off of me, and it's fucking awesome, honestly. I mean, there are some shitty things about DID, but that is one of the nice things. And speaking of nice things, let's now move to Wish. So Wish came about around the same time, well, like a couple years, I would say, after being introduced unwittingly to Truth. Wish, I thought, was a character that I made up, or that made itself up in my head. She, I didn't. She's an enigma. She's sneaky as fuck, too. Half the time I think she's dormant, but then all of a sudden it's like, yoo-hoo, I'm here, what's up, boo? And completely takes me off guard every time. She is a caretaker from what we know and from what we've discussed in therapy, because we've gotten her to come out before. I don't think she holds any trauma, but she just takes care of me. And when I was younger, she noticed, I guess, that I was just chronically lonely, and she thought that if she filled the void with furry animals, everything would get better. So she has been the reason that I have had well over literally 50 different species of animals in my house. And we get them, and then a week later I kind of come to and I go, shit, like, why do I have a hamster? Or fuck, why do I have a snake? I don't want this, and I'll get rid of it. But it's just her way of making me feel better, which worked when I wasn't aware. Because, I like animals, obviously. I like horses, I'm a cowboy. But there is a certain line that has to be drawn when it comes to reality where you can't have a fucking zoo and live in an apartment. So her job to fill my void has, kind of died down. And again, because of that, I always think that she's dormant. But of course, she comes out, she takes care of the animals that we do currently have, the dog and the cats and the horses and everything. So she still gets her fill of fun. She herself, I I think she's like a fairy kind of a thing. She has a really high pitched voice that kind of strains my voice when she comes out. And she just lives on her own little island in like a jungle in the inner world away from the main island because the whole inner world looks like Feyd. What do you know? So yeah, she does her own thing most of the time. She flies in the inner world, and whenever she comes out in person in this physical body, she gets really, really quickly overstimulated, and it can turn into a panic attack sometimes because I think she feels like the body's really heavy. Um, she just feels everything. It's like overstimulated basically, and then some other alter has to swoop in and switch out with her to save her because she's not very good at going back in for some reason, but she can sure as hell come out when she wants. And I would say her biggest triggers are animals in general, or if somebody's trying to talk to her and she hears somebody say her name, that's a really big one. I think the others are, I mean, they're kind of over it. Some alters have realized they don't have to listen every time somebody says their name, but she is pretty easy to dig up if you just go like, "Hey, Wish, fetch." She'll just fucking, you know what I mean. So she's a riot. She's not super appreciated by all the system members because of her super high just she's got a lot of fucking energy. She still exhausts the body when she comes out. It used to be only in the very beginning when when the system first became active and I started switching and things like that. It would be really exhausting, like mentally exhausting. It'd be hard to like talk the next day almost. But we kind of got over that with the other alters because it's been more regular switching. They're almost co-hosts, I guess you could say at this point. But with her, since she doesn't come out a lot either, um, not as infrequently as Truth, but she's like I said, does her own thing most of the time. When she comes out, it can cause a lot of not stress, but it's exhausting. It gets really exhausting to do her switch for some reason. But she means well. We all love her. I almost ruined my relationship with her in the beginning because I thought she was annoying and like too much as well, and accidentally chased her off for a little while there. But I think we're slowly healing that relationship. Thank goodness, because we need her. We need everybody. That's why she's there. So thank you, Wish. And let's see who is next. I'm gonna go with Jean. So Jean was another one that kind of came hand in hand with Truth. She, I mean, looks like a fucking alien, but when I asked her, like, "Hey, are you an alien?" Like when I first met her, she was like, "If I was, would it matter?" Ooh. And I was like, "Oh, fuck, I guess not." Like, whatever. I just fucking went with everything, man. At this point, again, growing up super religious, when you believe you hear a Holy Ghost telling you what to do, it's not that much different when you suddenly have alters that are also, telling you what to do and trying to help you out. So, she is dormant as far as I know. Like, she has only ever come out maybe 3 times in the past course of, what is it, 5 years maybe. She, I think, was a lot like Truth in this. Like, they had the same kind of prerogative. They both were caretakers. She could do that thing where she could remove anxiety and just like that kind of stuff from me. But she kind of stepped back. I don't know what the fuck she does now. Again, she's just dormant, which means that she's just like in sleep mode, basically. Like, she just doesn't exist right now. But I know she's still kind of there sometimes because I can like sense it if she's sort of like, I guess, peeking in through the blinds. But I wouldn't be surprised if she just stayed dormant for a really long time or eventually fused with truth or something. Because again, they're pretty similar in their roles on the system. I would say it's just truth does a lot more of the muscle work at this point. So Jean, we love her, but not much to say about her because I don't really know that much about her. So next, let's do this guy. Okay. So Sullivan, who also goes by Sully, he hasn't learned, I don't think, to not listen when I talk about him very much, so I might get a little fuzzy trying to explain him. But Sullivan, again Sully, is a persecutor alter, which means he lashes out on the body. He has a lot of trauma. He's got basically all the trauma from my childhood just packed into him. He wasn't originally what he is now. He used to be what I called Evie, or well, I didn't fucking call her that. She was just this self-proclaimed shadow child named Evie who was just sad all the time. And then there was this guy who lived in the dungeons of our inner world named Dimitri, who literally sounded like Heath Ledger's Joker voice and would just tell me horrible things all the time and like try to, yeah, it was really fucking scary to hear that voice kind of echoing up from the depths of my brain. But he fused or integrated together with Evie, the Dimitri guy, fused with Evie, and out came Sully. That's the only thing I can think of because Dimitri and Evie no longer exist, and Sully is an age slider, which means he can be young, which is around the ages of 3 or 4, or he's a grown ass adult like I am. So it just kind of, intertwined both those elements of those separate alters and became him. And he was a lot at first. I'm not even sure if I described persecutor alters very well, honestly. I don't I understand it enough to know that I shouldn't be afraid of them and that they're just doing their job and acting out because of the trauma that they hold. But he was a lot. He appeared when I was trying to pretend I didn't have DID for about a week. It was working pretty well. It was pretty quiet, for a long time. And I was at that point where I was like, oh my god, like, I am making it up. Wow. And then I was just hanging out at the park with my dog, and he was like, hello, motherfucker. And just, fucking ruined that whole thing of trying to pretend I was sane. So he came out. He had a lot of issues because we had some issues with him. We have some territorial alters, Roderick, and nobody wanted to interact with him because he was just so violent and mean and rude. And when he came out, in the body, he would, trigger warning, hurt us because I was trying to kind of ignore him and like suppress him. He would cut us and he would say that every mark is a sign and you won't be able to ignore my signs. And that was fucking creepy. And so he acted out a lot because nobody understood him, even though I was like, hey guys, this is a persecutor. We all know what that means. And they're like, we gotta fucking run. And I was like, no, we gotta accept him. But it was hard because it's not like just trying to turn a book character into a good guy. It's a literal separate consciousness who has their own agenda and wants to do their own thing. You can't just turn them the other way and say, yeah, you bad guy, you're good now. Please be nice. Haha. It just doesn't work that way. So yeah, when he's big, he's scary, and when he's small, he's generally mute as well. And just kind of cries a lot in the beginning. That's how it was. And after a while, I think he started to pick up that we were all afraid of him. And so he would be in his little state way more often than his large state because I know he knew that he was scaring us. And even though he was in so much pain and didn't know what to do about it, he didn't want to put us off. I mean, that's like my reasoning of it. Like, that's what makes sense to me. of why he acted the way he did, but he, you know, little Sully. I mean, let me tell you, he cute ass kid. Like, oh, he's great. He really is. But because of all this wonderful intensive therapy we've been doing, EMDR sessions, and working through trauma, he has almost turned a full 180. I feel like I can say safely. He is way more enjoyable. He's bigger more often now, and he and Rod and the other alters can interact nicely and play nice, together. And he's a lot of fun. He really, really is. He likes to run errands for me. That was like the first thing he did, I think, when he came out one night. He just like hacked into my little memory log to-do list and said, Darkly wants eye drops. I can do that. Me, pick me. And just like fucking took off and went in the truck and went to the store and got eye drops. And like, bless his heart, he didn't get the right kind, but he tried. He did his best. He loves to run errands. He likes to go out and eat. And he loves food. He loves ice cream. Like, that's his thing. He loves ice cream, anything sweet. I think it might come with being a little, meaning like his little state, being a child. They like sweets. What can you do? And he also has an accent as well. It took me a while to kind of figure it out, but I'm pretty sure it's like a New York accent, or, more specifically, like, what is it? Like a Staten Island kind of like thing going on. I don't know why. His makes a little more sense than Truth's, though, because I did have an uncle named Bob, literally, actually, and he is from New York, and we've got family in New York because Los Dominicanos están in New York. That's just what we do, so a lot of family up there. But yeah, in the beginning, again, going back to how when he first showed up, he didn't necessarily put a mental strain on the system whenever he would front, or like on the body, I guess I should say, but his was just very, very like this physical, like exhaustion. Like, if he came out, again, usually big when he was first around and violent, the whole body would just every muscle would just tighten. Like, it was so bad. Like, probably he was front for like an hour at one point, maybe even longer. But I remember waking up the next day and like my stomach muscles were just so sore and my arms were just wrecked. Like, it's almost like a seizure kind of position that he would just lock into because of all this emotional stuff going on. He didn't know what to do with it. He didn't know what to do with the body, and it was just, yeah, it would fuck us up a little bit. And he's very strong, so when he's out, he's like out. Most of the time, I can kind of linger around and like watch and stuff, but with him, a lot of the times, I think that's the closest I get to like a full amnesia like experience. But Akuna Matata, that was the past. We're doing so much better now with him. I'm really, really proud of him. I'm very hopeful that one day he won't be a persecutor, because I mean, I don't know what he's going to do in the future with this whole move and everything to Texas coming up. Like, he might get triggered and stuff, especially since we're going back to our childhood home. But, you know, he's this close to just not being a persecutor anymore and just being like a good old protector, just like Roderick. So, drum roll please. Roderick. As you know, Roderick Stone is the main character in the book Feyd. At the time when I came up with the book idea, Roderick, the character, showed up and was like, hey, you should write this story. And I didn't realize it was a story about my life and him wanting to make me realize what was going on. So I turned him into, like, I inceptioned the idea of being a fictive, which means an alter that's based off of a fictitious character. There are some alters that can also be based off of celebrities, or just anything that your brain goes, hey, that's a safe, nice person, or even a bad person, like, for whatever reason. Like, it just takes that person from reality or from a book and puts it in your head, and it's completely out of your control. So when I realized I had alters, and as I was writing the book and feeling like near the point where we were about to get it published, I was like, shit, like, am I schizophrenic? Like, what the fuck is happening right now? Because things were getting really intense with this so-called character of mine who was just commandeering the story and telling me what to do all the time. I kind of realized, like, oh, he's just a fictive, I guess, like he came from the book. He did not just come from nowhere, when really he did, actually just he's been around forever. He has memories from when we were kids. But I kind of forced that idea of being a fictive on him, so he has gone through his own journey of becoming an individual again and separating himself from who we call his stunt double. So Roderick Stone is his stunt double. It's just the way we put it to create that, that draw that line. But Rod, or Roderick himself, as you can see, looks, I mean, he looks like the character, but he's a little bit different. He's got a little more hair. His eyes are like more owlish and just I don't know. He looks a little bit different, at least to me. But he had to work through, you know, basically separating himself enough from that character because he would have actual flashbacks that the character had that he didn't actually experience in real life, and he had a lot of angst toward, you know, like things that I never went through, like military. Jesus Christ, like Rod went through the military, before or after high school or whatever, but I've fucking never been in the military. But he would have flashbacks about it that I had no control of. And, anyway, we're at that point finally. There's a clean line drawn between the character. I now know and recognize that he is an individual. He's really big on individualism. If I ever doubt his existence, he's the one who gets really pissed about it. But Rod himself is a trauma holder and a physical protector because he holds a lot of memories of when I was being either, again, trigger warning, physically abused or like attacked, because that's fucking happened to me a few times, or so he's that guy. He's the muscle head, I guess, of the group, who takes care of a lot of things on the outside, not just the emotional things on the inside. So just like with Sully, we've been working really hard in therapy and going through things with him to help him heal and become a better protector and be able to just focus on the current reality that we're existing in rather than towing this whole thing of, trauma. But I mean, Rod, if you've read the book or you follow my profile, like he, personality wise, is Roderick Stone. He's actually a little more, I guess, easygoing, I guess you could say, than the character himself. But in almost every sense, he is Roderick Stone, the stunt double. He doesn't get as angry as the character does. Like, he doesn't have an actual anger issue like he does. But, he's got his own ways of expressing his very strong emotions. His thing a lot of the time, like if he's front and if he's having like a moment, our eyes, like he'll kind of like our face will shut, our eyes will shut, and then they'll move really fast back and forth, and he'll just kind of like freeze up. This is usually in the case of like flashbacks, which luckily don't happen as often with him anymore. But he deals with a lot and he does it well. And when he's out, it's pretty smooth since, again, he's kind of likes to argue that he's like co-host because we are out almost together all the time, just kind of sharing this co-conscious kind of, experience, because he says, and I quote, the inner world is so fucking boring, and he doesn't really care to be in there, so he likes to partake in my life. But I could honestly just keep going on and on about all of my alters. It's really hard to condense, their what they're like and what it's like to experience them, as like their puppet whenever they come out, in just one video. But I think I mentioned in another video, I do keep a is it Wattpad or Wattpad or whatever the fuck pad. I've got one of those that I publish basically journal entries on of what our system is like, exactly what the inner world is like, and the therapy sessions that we go through. Like, I'm just documenting everything for the sake of just keeping tabs and staying organized, I guess, through this crazy whirlwind. So if you're interested in following that or learning more about that, I'll leave my for my whatever pad thing in the description of the video below. So yay, now you know my alters. Yeehaw. Let's move to the questions finally. I've actually been really looking forward to checking these out, so let's pull it up here. Let's see, question number 1 is blank. I wonder if that was a misinput, but yeah, there's nothing there. Anyway, next question, what is DID? Kind of already went over that. That is, dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder, and it is it's in the name. It's a dissociative disorder. So when you experience trauma, your brain learns to dissociate from it, but instead of just blocking it and creating little pockets of trauma that most people experience and eventually kind of have mental breakdowns over, it separates it so much that it literally separates that part from your brain from yourself, and it gets like its own ego, like it's its own person. It really just becomes this part of your brain that shows up when that trauma happens to take the front for you, and eventually ends up gaining all these experience points that turn it into a human. Just like your personality is based off of your experience, we're all just walking synapses, basically. Sorry, existential fucking words, you know what I mean. Life is meaningless. Anyway, next one. Okay, does it affect the way in which you can be creative, and how? Oh, I like that. These are the good questions. Okay, so DID itself, or OSDD, whatever, tomato. It, I don't know if I would say it affects the way I can be creative, but it definitely is a really great mask when it comes to it, because I've lived my whole life being very creative and coming up with stories to escape reality and all that fun stuff, and it hides very well within that pocket, because you get authors who are like, oh, I hear voices, I must be crazy, my characters talk to me. Like, it just fits really, really well in there to be like, he thinks he's just crazy and that he's creative, but we're actually people. Let's just hide in that section. So it masked it, is what it did, and it helped me be creative because I had all these freaking people telling me how to write books, like with Feyd and Rod, and it was nice, but at the same time, it doesn't help the doubt, because I'm like, oh shit, like, is this just a new character I made up, or is this a fucking new alter? But I would say it affects the way I can be creative in a more positive light than in a negative way, just because I think most people that I've come across who have DID, they tend to be very creative people, and they're usually artists or authors, surprisingly enough. But again, I think that just comes with the fact that most authors and artists are the type of people that are trying to escape the drudgery of reality. So, again, it masks it really well, but overall, I think helps it, in my opinion. Next question, let's see. What is it like learning about your diagnosis? Were you confused or relieved? I wasn't confused at first because I wanted an answer, so I went in, already kind of in panic mode, like I need to know what's going on. Yeah, I guess I was confused at first, but when I got the diagnosis, I kind of, like, I was hoping for it, in a sense, like I was, like, I swear, like, I honestly answered everything to the best of my ability, because you take all these tests and things, and I told myself, like, all I can do is tell the truth and nothing but. And if the results come out in the way that I think they're going to come out, then that must be the truth, And so I tried my fucking hardest to just be as just cut, dry, like whatever as possible, so I can get the truth out of it all, out of all the, tests and therapy shit that I had to go through when I was getting diagnosed. And so when I got that diagnosis, and when they told me, hey, yeah, you have this, it wasn't as relieving as I thought it was, because then it just opened a whole other can of worms of like, oh shit, now what? And I was hoping to be relieved, but it really wasn't. It just kind of created more unknown to, fear. But I mean, it's gotten better since then, of course, because we've had months and months and months to figure it out, and we went back to therapy, and that's been really helpful. But yeah, it it was scary, and sometimes still kind of is. But that's how it went when it came to being diagnosed. And let's see, next question again. Who has the best memes, and how much do I need to pay to get a glimpse? um, um, I don't know if this is in regards to who, like which of my alters collects the best memes, or like what page on Instagram has the best memes. I don't think I can answer that question, unfortunately, so I'm gonna move to the next one. Is anyone more active than the rest, and do they have a sports mode and or a home mode? Good question. I think like anybody, like any singleton, or any person who's not a multiple with, different or not personality. That's not really what you call it. It's alternates identities. That's why they call them alters. So anybody who is just a single identity has different parts, of their personality. So, you do have a work mode, and you do have a home mode, chilling with the dog mode, and like hanging out with the homies mode. So, I mean, in that regard, I guess yes, they're human. That's my answer to that. Like they can adapt to situations, but when it comes, excuse me, to who is more active, I would have to say Rod again, because he's the one who's always like, yo, I want to get in this shit, because he hates being inside. And let's see, next question. What's the most unusual thing any of you have done? I mean, nothing too unusual, I would say, because most of the time they're trying to not be obvious. But I did end up with a random jar of pickles in my fridge that I don't remember buying, that just suddenly showed up, which, courtesy of Rod for doing that. He really loves pickles, which is why in the merch shop on Etsy that I have, his sticker has him holding pickles in honor of his passion for pickles. Oh man, he's a funny guy. Okay, next one. Who do you think has the best music taste, and what genre do they prefer? Uh, hmm. I'm biased. I don't. Me and Rod have the same music taste. Again, we're very similar. We we look the most alike as well. So he likes kind of, rock, metal kind of stuff, 90s, 80s thing. I like that too. I of course have my own other taste of like, I really enjoy like music soundtracks and things like that, scores like from Hans Zimmer and things like that. But I would say Roderick has the best music taste, and we get along pretty well. But so does Sully, because he kind of likes that punk stuff, and that's always a lot of fun too. So, good question. Let's see. Next one. Have you ever accidentally ate something random, or something you wouldn't normally eat? And it kind of cuts off there, but I think I know what you're saying. Yes, somebody in the system likes putting mayonnaise on our burritos, and I don't know who that is. So that's fun. Let's see. Do you consciously know your alters, or is it like lost time? I think you're trying to, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, or ask the question again in the comments if I'm wrong. I think you're asking, am I consciously aware that my alters are out, or is it lost time? So, like I said, I don't really experience amnesia. So when they come out, because it's not just like this sudden switch and it's like a blackout, or I'm like suddenly inside the inner world, it feels like I am suddenly becoming a puppet. They have their own ways of holding the body up and like talking. They'll do different things with our vocal cords and whatever. They have their own way, and when they come through, it feels like something is moving inside of me, like an alien, but like more energy wise. And it's like I am the glove, and they just fucking stuck their hand in me. Which, that sounds weird. Okay. Anyway, you know what I mean. So I'm just being controlled and like watching in this sort of detached, hazy stupor of, whatever they decide they want to do, or whatever they want to say. And I can sometimes retain what they do and what they say, but sometimes it's, a little more on the amnesia side and I don't remember what they said or what happened. What is it like dealing with it day to day is the next question, which that's a common question I got, so I won't read and address every single specific one of those, but the day to day life with DID, OSDD, take your pick, it's very hazy. I forget shit a lot. And it's, I guess it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's nice, but I do recognize the difference of what my life was like before my system became active and decided to like show themselves versus like what it's like now. So before I was like, yeah, I remember shit. So like I'm sharp. I'm like an elephant. There's nothing I can't forget. Like I was just, and I was also very impulsive, which I didn't think was a problem. But that life was a lot more clear. I remember, and now things are, it's just constantly sharing, like I can't look at something without somebody being triggered in a good way or a bad way and having an opinion on it and voicing that opinion, or it's like having roommates in your head that follow you everywhere you go. And so if I'm in the middle of work, I can get really, I just call it fuzzy because it's a lot easier than being like, I start dissociating. But I get really fuzzy during work or something like that, and I have to, take a few minutes and just like chill out and like remind them, like, hey, I'm at work, like, please play inside while I'm out here doing my shit, trying to keep us alive and make money. So I would say it just makes day to day life more exciting. No, it's a hard question. There's just more to deal with. It's like, you can text people all day and be on your phone, and you can put that phone away and set it on a shelf and just be alone. But like, I am never alone anymore, which is nice on the emotional level. But sometimes you just want to fucking be alone. Like it's. I think that's the biggest difference is that there's just always somebody there, and somebody's always got something to say. Let's see. Next one. How many alters is that the word do you have? Okay, yeah, we already went over that. 6, I guess, counting me. Um, is it like multiple personality disorder, like the voices in your head and struggling with that? It is technically multiple personality disorder because again, that's what it used to be called. But uh, everybody experiences it differently. So I know some people actually hear real like voices more than anything, but in my system, it's very much what they call passive influence, which is again goes very kind of hand in hand and just how I was raised with like listening to the Holy Ghost and like feeling promptings and like strong feelings to do things or say things. Like that's mostly what it is. It's like this kind of like subtle like, you should do this, or like we should feel this way or whatever. And that's what it's like. But occasionally when they do verbally say something, it's a lot like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie that came out a little while ago, Chaos Walking, where you can hear their voices. Everybody's the people, you can like, hear their voices outside their head. It it starts pretty strong and then it just kind of fizzles. Like sometimes it's never a complete sentence, but it's just like this little blip of a voice happening. And again, sometimes they can finish the thought and it keeps going, but it's not as strong, I guess you could say. Like it's easier for them, especially since they've been in like incognito mode for so long, to use passive influence than it is to actually use words and speak. But if we're talking, obviously like they're gonna talk back and stuff like that. Let's see. How would you best describe it? I don't have DID, but I'm curious. Yeah, me too. Um, I would describe it like being an author, honestly, like having stories and ideas in your head, but you have no control of them at all. Like there's one thing to be like, oh, my characters are just taking the story away with them. Like, oh, it's so crazy that they can just do what they want to do. But it's like, yes, because I feel that. I know that. I've written stories since I was like, well, written and made comics because I couldn't write when I was 5, but I've been doing stories forever, so I know that feeling. But it is very distinctly different when you have a character that won't agree with you versus an alternate part of your brain that is like completely thinks that they're a human. So it's, again, like having roommates in your head, and they're not always able to get along, but we try our best. Let's see. How did you first find out you had DID? I was 16 or 17, and I was a junior in high school. Eh, I didn't fucking know I had DID then, but that's like when Rod showed up and I got this idea for the book, like fucking 10 years ago. And then when I started writing it last year, and I was obviously listening to him more because I was like trying to be a good author and listen to my characters, I started to realize, like, yo, whoa, like, put on the brakes, dude. Like, what is happening right now? And that's when I started suspecting that something wasn't really right, because I remember talking with a friend once, and she was going to school to be a therapist, and she was like, "Oh, like, darkly, like, tell me, like, what's going on," because I was, fucked up about who knows what. I'm always fucked up. But she was trying to do kind of like a session with me. We were like sitting in this parking garage in her car eating Taco Bell, and she was like, "Let's go over this trauma." Oh yeah, I fucking remember what it is now. I probably don't hold that memory anymore, but trigger warning, I had a friend that tried to commit suicide by drinking windshield wiper fluid, and like they literally fucking almost died, and they were missing for like 3 days. It was a fucking ordeal. But when I was talking about it with my friend, I like didn't really feel anything because I wasn't holding the emotional baggage, and she was trying to like make me tap into myself, like, "Hey, Darkly, why are you so sad? Like, it's okay." And I was like, "This isn't working. Like, do I have to address myself? Like, can I talk to somebody else?" Because at this point I was like, Rod is kind of like a person, I think, maybe. And so she's like, "Yeah, you can talk to anybody as long as the emotions come out." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I was like, "Hey, Rod, I know you're in there," and just kind of going with it, but using that, I guess, the way of phrasing it. I was like, "Hey, like, I know you're there, and I know you're really upset about your friend who almost killed themselves, and blah blah blah." And it was like waterfall tears, like crazy explosion of just emotion that he was carrying that came out. And when that happened, I was like, "Hold the fuck up, what?" Because that didn't come out of me. So that was probably one of the first moments where I was like, "This is sus." And I started looking into it, but I started going more of the route of like schizophrenia because I didn't understand how schizophrenia worked or anything like that. So that's immediately what I assumed. And yeah, that's, I think, when I first started to realize that something was up, And then things started getting worse and worse and worse, and the self harm was getting like out of control because I just started feeling like I was crazy, and I was like, well, crazy people hurt themselves, so I guess I'll just fucking do that. And then I went to therapy and got diagnosed because I was like, yeah, this shit can't keep going on. So that's the story there. Let's see. Do your alters ever argue, and if so, how do you resolve it? I guess they kind of argue. It's actually not a lot. They usually resolve it on their own. It used to be a lot of Truth and Rod kind of butting heads, and now it's more Rod trying to control Sully and keeping him in check, even though, again, Sully's been doing really well. But yeah, they usually resolve it. We haven't had like an actual big fight between anybody yet that hasn't been able to get resolved. And then next here, let's see. Do your characters resemble or match your alters? And which ones? Honestly, if any of them resemble any of them, I guess, Marty is very similar to Wish. I, myself, since I guess I'm technically an alter, am very similar to Leono, I guess I would say. And Rod is Rod. And yeah, that's really as far as it goes when it comes to resemblance, I would say. Let's see, next one. Who is your main alter, and who is the one that doesn't like to come out, and why? Rod is probably the main, and when it comes to like not coming out, it's not like they don't words. It's not like they don't like to come out. It's just they don't have a reason most of the time, and that would probably be Truth. Uh, do they have different preferences in favorite food? If so, what are they? Um, when it comes to the others, again, Sully just likes candy and sweet shit, and Rod is just obsessed with hamburgers. So I have ingested so many burgers ever since he has come out. It's not even funny. Let's see. Can you describe what it feels like to switch between alters? Yes. The best way I can describe it is like two radio dials. One of them is my frequency, and the other one is the other alter that wants to come front. So again, because I don't really experience the full amnesia, it's more like my dial suddenly gets lowered and turned down, and theirs starts coming up. And it can be anywhere between me being at like 1% power and them being 99% power or whatever, but or anywhere in between, from there. So it's like little dials most of the time is what I would say. Like frequencies, it's just a very minor just adjustment that's made. Let's see. Everyone's favorite color. uh, I don't know. All I know is that Rod likes black, obviously, and Sully likes green and orange. Mm, are there times where you feel like you're unconscious if the other fronts longer than they usually do? Yes, that's where I kind of start losing track. Or even if they're out for a while and I kind of realize like they're not going to fuck shit up, then I'll take more of a step back and let myself not micromanage and try to obsess about what's happening, and I can let myself just chill out and be nowhere, for a while. But again, I still have some sense of like being there, at least just a little bit, most of the time. And let's see. Have I ever felt unconscious during a different altered? I have felt like I am about to faint, but I never get to that point of being completely unconscious as far as I know. Again, because if I blacked out, like I'm not going to know. Uh, do you ever feel a loss of sense of time? Yes, when I'm fuzzy during the day or dissociated all day, because sometimes that happens, like the lights are on and no one's home, like nobody wants to take the front. Sometimes that happens. I Time goes by really fast, which is a good thing and a bad thing. But yeah, it can go by really fast when you're sharing time slots. Uh, does it feel like everyone has a separate mentality or a shared cohesive, I'm assuming, mentality, working together but just thinking in different ways? Oh, that's an interesting question. It definitely feels separate, but we're both kind of, I mean, both, all of us, there's more than just two of us. Um, I think we're all mostly on the same page because right now we're all on the let's get better together kind of page. Like everybody's thankfully super willing to be in therapy and work on themselves. So we have like a shared goal and shared interest, but it definitely is a change in mindset whenever there's like a switch, and they definitely have their own opinions and, perceptions and things like that. Do you guys smell things differently? Not well, I can't speak for the others. I know Rod has a stronger sense of smell than any of the others for some reason. He gets really distracted with smells. He used to also get pretty overstimulated, kind of like Wish when he first came out in the beginning. It took a lot of trial and error and just practice, honestly, to get him to be able to front smoothly. Are one of them, or are one of you blind or colorblind? And if so, does it affect you? Do you think it would if they are? Uh, Again, mostly it's just Rod because he's just the one that we've interacted with the most, or that I've interacted with the most. He doesn't have very good vision. He squints a lot, just like in his character Roderick Stone. He doesn't. Yeah, he can't see very clearly, so he squints a lot, and I guess that kind of affects us, but not anything too bad. Nothing's like really extreme. Um, let's see. I know he reacts differently to food as well. So if I eat something that I normally enjoy, it can make him like our entire bowel system can get fucked up if he's present when I'm eating something that normally doesn't agree with him. Let's see. Who likes the outdoors and who likes being indoors? I think everybody for the most part likes the outdoors, except Sully does have like a lot of social anxiety. I've noticed when we're out, even though he likes to go out and run errands, he does have a hard time just being able to focus on the task because he's so afraid that when people look at us, they're like gonna see him or something, or they're gonna like see through him. Like he feels like he's a mask of sorts, I guess, and it makes him uncomfortable. But he still does it. I mean, he's a little trooper, so he'll do it regardless. Let's see. When did you get diagnosed, and how do you try to manage it? I got diagnosed well, it feels like it was just such a short time ago, but I guess it was last year around November. No, I don't know. It actually was probably in January or December. I think it was January, maybe February. I don't know. It was at the beginning of the year. Everything's blurry. Like, it was the beginning of the year is when I got diagnosed, and I try to manage it by going to therapy. Like, that's really the only outlet I can do. I tried just doing it solo with myself and coping on my own, and that resulted in, trigger warning, lots of drug use and self harm and just not great shit, because obviously I can't handle trauma. That's why I fucking split in the first place. So I need somebody to help me work through trauma. So therapy has been the lifesaver, quite literally, when it comes to managing it. Because there's no medication that you can take to get rid of it. You can take medication for the side effects like depression that come with it and anxiety and things like that, but you can't take medication to get rid of DID. So it's just kind of there unless everyone decides to integrate and quote unquote cure yourself, which again doesn't usually happen. I guess eventually people can integrate all together if they want to into one being again, but I don't have any interest in that. Now that I have found out that I have brain friends, I really want to keep them because they're all I have. Because, kind of rabbit hole, but God never fucking helped me when I needed him, and these alters that live in my head have consistently helped me. So I don't have any intention of trying to integrate with any of them at all. But if they do on their own, then that's up to them. But yeah, that's just me and how I manage it and how I plan to manage it from here on out. Somebody else asks, how has living with DID been for you? I really love your art, and I'm excited to start your book. Oh, thank you so much. That means so much to me, honestly. I love you so much as well. Um, uh, I've kind of already addressed that, but yeah, living with DID has just been, it's just busier. It's like a crowded, just space all the time. Like there's just always something going on, never alone. It's kind of nice, but also kind of shitty, but hey, it is what it is. And I guess another thing I never really ever had issues with before that I have issues with now is like the body dysmorphia, because when you have all these different genders in your head, and well, I guess we only have one girl, but still, it it gets sticky, when they come out, and you come back in from whatever they left, you feel their emotions and how they feel about the body, and it can cause a lot of dysmorphia, a lot of looking in the mirror and literally not recognizing myself, or just feeling like I look weird, like that's something I've never had a problem with, but now do. So it just kind of happens, I guess, when you have all these different people who perceive themselves in different ways going on the inside. Let's see. Somebody else asked if you could explain DID, which again, luckily we've already kind of covered all that. How does it affect your daily routine? Yeah, I wake up in the morning and I try to be conscientious and say, good morning, alters, because they're not fucking going anywhere, so might as well be courteous, And I try to involve them in things. So if there is a decision, or if I do plan to do something that involves them, like this video, for example, has been going really well because I told them, hey, I'm going to be talking about you guys, be aware. Like it's more of like a team effort now. I would say life is more of a team effort, more input kind of going on. Let's see. Another person's asking how many I have. Again, 6. Please, I myself have DID, and I like hearing others' experience, so maybe one day I can speak about my own. I love you, and you know who you are, and if you have DID, that makes us related now, so congratulations. We are trauma brothers. Yeah, honestly, it's kind of weird because DID I feel like has become like this weird trend lately. Again, I don't know if that's because that's the genre I'm in, so I'm now being exposed to it more, but it seems like it's just everywhere now. And part of me hates that because I'm like, oh cool, like my trauma's on trend, ha ha ha. But it's definitely been really inspiring to hear other people and like YouTube, channels and stuff like talk about their experience, and it's kind of, you do have to remember that your experience is completely different from somebody else's. There can be similarities, but the most toxic thing I would say to keep in mind is to not compare your DID with somebody else's, because it's just as bad as like comparing yourself as an individual to somebody else. Because if you go, oh well, my shit doesn't line up with their shit, like it just makes the doubt worse, which is already a huge issue in DID anyways. So just be confident in your disorder, I would say. Like, that's all I can really say about that. But that's really awesome that you're able to, come out and say that, because this is a huge, again, deal with real life consequences. You can't just let anybody know that you have DID. Hence the reason I have a pen name. Like, I can't just go out and be like, hey guys, I have the crazy. Like, sorry again, it's inappropriate, but like, you can't just go around just throwing that shit around. So people get scared. They don't know how it works. They think everything's Hollywood. So, gotta read the room. Let's see. Next question. Do you like your drinks with or without spicy, aka alcohol? Um, Honestly, I mean, I know I'm like 26. I prefer my drinks without the spicy because I have been very, very intoxicated before where I thought I was going to die. Like, it was bad. It was fun in the beginning, when you're fucking dancing on chairs and tables and shit, but then it's not so fun when people are trying to get you to be conscious and eat food and like have to like hand feed you and like fucking drag you and like debate on whether or not you should go to the hospital. So yeah, I'm a bit of a lightweight. I like to call it fuel efficient, but yeah, I don't fuck with that very much. I'm sure probably if anybody trigger warning. Sorry, I probably should have said that at first. If any of the alters are interested in that kind of a thing, I would probably say it would be Rod or maybe Sully, but I know Rod is more inclined to the the fun things of adulthood, you could say, I guess. Let's see. Next question. May I pretty please offer the fruit gummy? What does that even mean? Sure, I guess, yes. Let's see, next one. This is the same person. Would any of you fine folk care for an uncooked corn kettle or corn kernel or a questionably clean seed? I mean, I guess Wish would take it. She's like the nature girl, the animal girl. I'm sure she wouldn't mind an extra corn kernel to add to her collection of shit that she's brought into the house. Not only animals, but we have like marbles and crystals and stuff, which I'm pretty sure are from her. And let's see. I think that is all that we got here. Nice. Thank you guys so much for. I mean, if you're still listening, fucking hell, like, you're a champ already. But thank you very much for the engagement. Again, maybe one day I can figure out how to do a live. But this has been awesome. I've really, really liked, um, you know, getting my shit out there. I guess with you guys, it's difficult, but it's helpful in the sense that it helps me come to terms with it more, and it just like, again, this whole thing is all mental health related. Like, this is how it works. This is why the book was made, which, going into that, I guess I shouldn't leave out when it comes to the book, because it's mental health related and all that fun stuff. um all the little Easter eggs and stuff that happened in there without me even realizing, that kind of alluded to DID, are as follows. So just hang on here as we kind of swerve down this rabbit hole before I wrap up. Also, of course, if you haven't read the book, this is the spoiler moment, so don't listen any further if you don't want to have anything spoiled, but just little bullet points, I guess we could say. For those, again, who know and who've read the book, Jane talks to Rod in his head with like zero explanation. Like, and I was like, oh, maybe it's like the essence of his birth mother or whatever, but I think that was like a part of the book where somebody, probably Rod, was trying to tell me, like, hey, like, there are voices in your head and you don't question it. Why is that? Darkly. And I, again, didn't even think anything of it until later. There are people in comas, which represent dormant alters. And the phasing that they do between Feyd and reality is literally switching from the inner world to the external world of reality, so that's fun. And Marty, who is 8 years old, you know, she's Rod's like super protective over them, and that is because that is when I started to become aware of, I think, my abuse and just life. I could start to put a name to my problems. Like when I was 8, I started realizing like this shit ain't right. Like what the fuck is life, you know? And they kind of represent that. Um, and then Marcus. This was a very, very recent realization I made. He is 16. He's the kid that Dr. Stone, runs into at the end at his office. He's coming in for a therapy session, and that's when Rod meets Marcus and starts to interact with him, which is around the same age I also met Rod. So that is spooky a little bit, but yeah, it was all just embedded there. I never realized any of this stuff until after I got diagnosed, and even more, aspects of that are written out in detail. In I think I've got 2 posts on my profile grid that are Feyd spoilers, and it goes over all the other little Easter eggs and hidden things that are in the book, because everything in that book symbolizes something. So yeah, that's Feyd. Feyd is my fucking life, literally. But again, thank you guys very, very much for bearing with me through this crazy long, what's now turned into a YouTube video, I'm pretty sure. Um, but I love you guys. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. I love interacting with you guys. Otherwise, just DM me and I can also answer questions. But yeah, let's call it a night, because it is nighttime right here, right now, where I'm recording. So stay strong and live long if you can, I guess. My own version of the, what is it, Klingon greeting and goodbye. So anyways, I'm a nerd. Love you guys. Bye.